Eco Movie, a company providing film productions with an integrated on-site environmental impact reduction service and an independent sustainability certification. So before I invite a panelist to speak, we are going to screen the first of a few trailers. So to the tech team, can we have the first trailer, please?
Vad har du? 45 millimeter.
I am quite sure that we will be able to make music out of the ice that we see here, but I don't know what kind of music yet.
Greenland is special because it has this enormous ice sheet.
So as we go deeper down, of course, we're going further back in time. As the snow accumulates year after year after year after year, century after century, millennia after millennia, back in time.
Hello, this is the holy room of the scientists. Oh,
Wow.
some pieces of ice have no sound at all. Some pieces sound just a little bit. You never know. One thing is for sure, that is, if you have artificial made ice, it never sounds. So that's the secret that nature has.
Tommy, can I ask you, as the director of the film, to walk us through that clip? What is it about, really?
This is more of an introduction to Terje and his big artistic project, like how to make music out of ice. And according to him, that is the closest thing to impossible in the world, because it is actually just frozen water. And to make that sing, to find timber is for a musician, the most impossible project, and has been his big desire for the last 25 years to develop ice music.
That's amazing. Now, climate is obviously an important topic that the film does address in some ways. Can I ask you to comment about the importance of climate and the importance of film to climate?
Yeah, so Terje started off as a musician, an artist, and he had his own ice music festival in Norway, up in the mountains where he was born. And then like 10 years ago, he had to relocate higher each year because the festival was threatened by mild weather. And then he ended up on the roof of Norway, like on the highest railroad crossing. And when we started filming with him 3 years ago, it melted there as well. And that became a kind of a call for adventure for him, because he had to decide whether to give up or try to use his music to change the world. And so, you know, even the subtext of the film is climate change. It's also music, because he uses music as a tool. And he is not, you know, he's not a politician, he's not a scientist, he's not a journalist, he's not an activist, he's an artist. And what we're trying with this film is to convey an artistic approach to climate change. Because I think what we have heard a lot of the last years are the information and the science behind it, and it's not a lack of knowledge. That's probably the problem now.
Absolutely, but what I think is particularly powerful about this film is that when you listen to the climate narrative globally, or rather the narrative about climate change, the cries, the climate protesters and movements, while I understand, obviously, professionally, its importance, the narrative focuses on these doom and gloom stories and alarmism, and I fear sometimes it might be leading to a certain degree of saturation with the topic, or climate fatigue. And I imagine there's so many films being produced about the climate again. So, one more climate film, and do you believe it can have an impact? But again, that's where what impresses me is the fact that your film deals with climate but doesn't focus on climate. It focuses on music. And it made me wonder, do you think this could be a very powerful way of addressing an important topic while reaching out to new audiences, maximizing audience engagement, diversifying sort of target audiences? How do you see it? And this question is to all three of you. I mean,
okay, I'll jump on there. There's a lot of questions in one big thing, but I can say, having tried to pitch climate stories for 15 years and meeting this attitude in the market where, you know, you're not really supposed to mention climate change, and the market has sort of been cringing because it loses ratings if you call it a climate film, has been extremely frustrating. And at the same time, we're living in this really exciting time where we have so many more tools as storytellers and documentarians to try to figure out how to bring people together around the fire. How do we tell stories that make people feel and not fear? And I think, you know, as one of the producers of this film, that is something I'm really certain that we will be able to do, because Terje's passion and love for nature and for our planet comes through his quest. And I really think that, you know, focusing on love and our connection to nature is maybe the most important thing we can do to save our planet right now.
Ludovica, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think this is crucial, actually. I'm a bit of the outsider of the panel, coming usually from behind the camera, but I think it is essential. I think it's also often translated into how we handle the production side when we have this kind of sensibility in front of the camera. I think that's amazing. And then I had another thing that I forgot because I was so mesmerized. I'll be very honest, so I'll say it whenever it comes back.
No, brilliant.
And I can also say that I think, to be perfectly honest, as a human being, it's so difficult to deal with climate change, and it's so overwhelming, and it can be so dystopic, and the easiest thing is to do nothing, because then you're not doing anything wrong. And as a documentary filmmaker, approaching climate change that seems like not a very clever thing to do if you want to have a good life. But when I heard Terje play for the first time up in the mountains in a venue made of ice and on ice instruments, it just changed me. I'm sorry, it did, because it spoke to me in a way that I had never experienced before, and I reconnected with nature in a way that. And I'm not like a new age kind of guy. I'm quite down to, you know, and I thought, can we make a film that will be able to transmit this experience I'm having now in the cinema, then I think that has a purpose. And for me, it's like, okay, when you deal with climate change, people will always ask you, you know, where's the hope? Is there any hope? Please give us a solution. And then you have, like, you can give people like hope in numbers or some scientific or technological solution. But with Terje's approach and this kind of ice music, it kind of bypasses like all the reason and all the facts and figures. And it's a way that your body can just instantly recognize this as something important. And you don't know what it is, but it affects you in the way that you're able to taste vegetables grown in a different way from like the mass-produced vegetables. They taste better. And why? So our body has the ability to recognize that something is better than the alternative. And you know, this experience has just motivated me a lot to make a film, because I want to give that experience without people needing to go to Norway to experience ice music. So that is your department, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because it actually came back to me. The other thing is often, especially again behind the camera, we talk a lot about carbon and how to calculate it and so on. And the difficulty, I think, is that of course we are so far removed, and it's not something you can see. I think often, you know, the communities that are more affected by climate change and or disasters are those that are clearly seeing it in front of their eyes. So I think opening a window to other places and doing it in a way that's, if not uplifting, at least inspiring, I think that's what our work is about.
Fascinating. On that note, perhaps we should invite the tech team to screen the second clip.
Is quite quite a sound. And if I practice on this horn, it will melt. We all know that ice can be very have these sounds, you know, like when you walk on ice or whatever. We don't know that ice have this gentle sound from the isophone. We did not expect ice to sound like bells, or even nicer than bells. This is something more in there. And for sure, I did not expect to find a lot of low frequencies. This is quite good, but the resonance of this one now is 3 seconds. I once made one that had a resonance of 17 seconds. That's quite something. To make music out of ice is probably the closest you can come to do something that is impossible. Because there are so many things that needs to be stable, and there are so many things that you cannot control. So first of all, you need ice that actually sound. It is not so that all ice can sound. And it will be variations from where you go, from where you harvest, but also within the same lake. And then weather might change, closer to 0, we are there. If it's getting +1, we are there. So it's a big difference from making music with this, still singing, there's that, and no resonance. Just by changing temperature 2 degrees. If there is a wind or mild weather or even rain, is a very big problem. But that's also one of the risks that I'm willing to take as a nice musician. Yes. This is a good one. Beautiful.
Tommy, over to you once again. Could you tell me a little bit more about this clip? About the clip, and also about the protagonist, Terje.
So this is Terje in his home turf, where he is happy, in his igloo in the Norwegian mountains, where he can bring ice from either local lakes or lakes of places you've heard of that have great sounding ice. And then he tests it, and then he prepares instruments for going on concerts. So this is kind of like the Ice Wizards workshop. And this is before the festival that actually melts. So some of these instruments, they do perish. And he has like this very nerdy interest and fascination for a very simple element in the world, frozen water. And I think what I find fascinating about him as a main character is that he has devoted his entire artistry to exploring the small wonders in frozen water. And if there's so much we didn't know about that, what else in nature? And this kind of fascination, almost falling in love, is, I think, just is a very healthy reaction as a human being, that there can be so much greatness in something that seems so simple.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tommy. When I think of climate reports, because I read so many of them, they focus excessively, or rather entirely, on scientific technicalities, and that's important. But I do believe it doesn't actually capture, obviously, the emotional effects, experiences of climate change, which in a strange sort of way music does far more effectively. And I remember sort of at COP15 in Paris, an Icelandic artist, Ólafur Eliasson, sponsored by Bloomberg, had this beautiful artwork where he brought in icebergs from Greenland and placed them in this sort of circle, and through every day of negotiations, the negotiators would enter the building and walk out of the building, seeing that artwork melt before their eyes. It served in a strange sort of way as a time clock. You know, time was ticking, and the negotiators, debating between pronouns and conjunctions, needed to reach an agreement soon. And so again, art, in a strange sort of way, played a far more powerful role at reminding negotiators in the room about the urgency of climate change. And I wonder, in the light of your film, if you believe music, has that same power and potential. So can I ask you to talk about that?
Personally, they say that musicians are the most beloved artists. That you fall in love with music in a way you don't fall in love with anything else. And I agree, it has a way of bypassing information. Mm-hmm. And I think we need that information, we need science, of course, but sometimes we just need to bypass all the noise. And in a way, like when you change your style of clothes or you change your taste of music, it's not because you read something scientific about it. It's because some impressions changed you. And I think that emotional entrance is really important to people. And that's why I think for me to make a climate film, to have a main character that is a musician and uses music as a tool, that was like the key. And I truly believe that. And I hang on to that.
Well, thank you.
I just want to jump on there, because one of the beautiful things about music is that it does something to your brain, right? It makes you think in different ways, and universally so, which is one of the most beautiful things maybe about music, and it sounds amazing in your heart in a way. But I just want to take a little moment and say I'm extremely proud to open the impACT program of Cannes, because that is one of the most important tools that we have as storytellers today, is working with impACT partners so that we can focus on creating the most powerful stories where we don't necessarily hammer our audience with facts, but focus on emotions and, the art of storytelling. But then if you team up with an impACT partner, you know that story is going to reach your target audience. It is going to connect and represent to the right people, which is makes documentaries and storytelling so much more impactful.
Brilliant. No, I obviously completely agree. I mean, having founded Think Film impACT Production with Danielle, who leads it so brilliantly. But can I ask you to comment? You said, on a point you made earlier, again, we spoke about these conflicting narratives, doom and gloom, need for hope and courage, the role of impACT, the role of art, music, film, and the creative industries in delivering that impact. Can I ask you to talk about the interplay between all of these multiple themes? Sorry, I'm sounding academic now, I can't help it.
Well, yes, please. I mean, one of the things that I'm getting really frustrated by and kind of pissed off about is always getting the question, especially from the US market, I have to say, that they always want a happy ending. They always want hope to be an important part of your story. And I don't necessarily think that's my role as a storyteller, to find hope. And especially, I have to admit that I kind of fall into the climate panic group. But acting out of panic doesn't get us anywhere. So we have to be smarter, and we have to kind of regroup as storytellers like this to try to find new ways together to bring our global tribe around the fire. And I personally also think that courage is what we need the most in order to save our planet and for our own survival. And you get courage out of hope. I'm not dissing hope. Hope, I mean, Tarje makes me extremely hopeful. Just make that clear. But I do feel that creating resilience and courage is maybe more what I personally focus on in my work.
That's very profound. Would you like to add something?
Yes, I was thinking of the fact that also, again, I was thinking back to the data and all of the reporting, right? And The other thing is that it's not just the environment, right? Sustainability is an intersectional issue with many other things. And if you try to unpack that in a very analytical way, of course, it's going to create chaos, and you're going to have to look at all of the things at once. And that becomes the eco-anxiety that we all have. But on the other side, you know, scientists are trying to tell us what this 1.5 degree means and so on. And this artist just told us 2 degrees less, it sounds different. I think it's a beautiful metaphor, and you know, when you have, you know, complex emotions can come in and sort of teach you many more things than trying to just analytically approach it. So I think that's our power.
That's brilliant.
And the challenge for us making this film was, how do we smash the glass and press the emergency button without smashing the glass and pressing the emergency button?
Yeah.
And this is our attempt.
Well, I'm glad you're not smashing the ice. So, but on that note, to the tech team, can we have the 3rd clip, please?
Can I give a short introduction? Is that possible?
Yes, of course.
Because this clip we're going to see now is a scene from a research station in Greenland. It's in the very center of the Greenland glacier. It's East Grip called, and they're core drilling down to the very bottom of the glacier, and then they can go back in time to, you know, find out a lot about how it was on Earth a long time ago. But they're also researching what will happen to the Gulf Stream when the glacier is melting, because it's about to collapse. And that might have like a much bigger impact than actually the rise of sea level. So Terje is going there as a guest because he is so curious to know how. I think that ice they're using there is about 200,000 years old. So it's about the same age as mankind that they are extracting. And he wants to know how it sounds. And the funny thing is that the researchers, they have spent all their summer holidays there working, because you can only work during the summertime, because otherwise it's covered by 40 meters of snow. And they have spent like decades there. And they know all about the ice cores because they research it, but they have never heard the sound. So he goes there as an artist and he meets scientists, but they are, you know, very interested in the same kind of core material.
Fascinating. I'd add more later, but can we have the 3rd clip, please, at this point? Just in the interest of time.
Til venstre her, eller? This is the holy room of the scientists. I tried to cut some of the ice, and the ice was just breaking all the time.
All right. 2.5 is okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Hey, den var med på.
Det gikk jo fint.
Det er helt fantastisk.
Ja, det?
Ja, ja.
Skal du ha den så til?
Ja, jeg vil ha en. Jeg vil ha den, ja. Nydelig. Party time.
Terje, my colleagues here.
Yeah?
Let them hear the ice.
I haven't checked it.
Okay. So I'm curious now. We'll see when we have the different variety of sounds. Thinner, thicker?
Kan ta en som er litt tynnere.
So the thicker the ice, the lower the note?
Nei, opposite.
Opposite, the thicker the ice, the higher the note.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a kind of marimba today.
Marimba.
Kind of marimba or xylophone or what you want to name it. And it's our lucky day because the ice have sound.
Okay. And it has to be a special kind of ice?
We never know exactly. So that's why this moment is very exciting for me because I don't know if the ice will sound or not, but we found out this morning. So this is most likely a C, I think, of the thickness.
Ja.
Det var det? Mm.
Try.
Hocus pocus. Let's see. What note do you want? Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is very good.
It's
I
good?
just do the tuning with a knife.
Okay. We can make
No,
more.
with a knife. Yeah. Thank you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Applaus.
So thank you for the introduction earlier. So what I think about the work of British Antarctic Survey are the UK research institutions that drill into the ice, bring back these long columns of ice, and the ice contains air bubbles that have been trapped there from different periods of human history. And when you examine the air in those ice pockets trapped in the ice, it teaches you an enormous amount about planetary conditions at any given point in time in human history. And I think it's marvelous because the ice in Greenland is perhaps our living connection to the ice ages, not just one or two, but many of them. And that's the power. But at no point had I ever imagined, and we had an ice column at COP26 in Glasgow last year, but at no point did I imagine that ice column being used as a musical instrument, or the potential of those air bubbles to produce music. In a strange way, it's actually marvelous as a phenomenon. You're connecting time, you're transcending space, you're producing something beautiful. Can I ask you to comment about that? Just the role of ice and music.
I think this is, I love where science and artistry just kiss, and then they move on in different directions, but they share like a moment. And these researchers, they go back to Copenhagen to analyze this course of ice, and they will know a lot. They have a lot of information. But Terje moves on, brings that ice home, and has the xylophone, which is now officially the oldest instrument in the world, because that marimba is 200,000 years old. And that is also quite fascinating for me as one single human being. Is like, it took 200,000 years to form that ice. But as a human, you have the power to melt it in 5 minutes. So time is extremely slow and extremely fast at the same time. And, that makes you very humble. And it kind of shows you how little you are, but also how much power you have. Because you can melt it. And this is also part of his project, is actually to let his instruments perish in front of the audience. Because now you can hear the sound, and now it's gone forever. And actually giving ice a voice. And for Terje and for us making the film, that voice is worth listening to, because that is the voice of the past. And when he blows his ice horn for the first time, I heard it. It had like a tremendous effect on me, because it was like I heard Mother Nature was calling in a way. And it is the sound. It is 200,000 years old. Yeah. And I think it just has a very important story about our future that we need to listen to.
That's incredible. Would any of you like to add anything at this point?
My only thought was before, while listening also to the others, is that of course we use this word impact, right? And especially in my field, we talk a lot about the negative. That has a negative connotation because it's about the production machine that is behind working. And some would argue, we don't have that much of a footprint compared to other industries. But then again, and so they would strive for virtual production, for example. Some of them would suggest that that's a less impactful way of working, although we wouldn't have any documentaries on glass if we were doing that. But on the other side, of course, we have the potential impact, or the impact in potential that we have to do so much more good is probably worth the investment in a way. So I think it is, of course, also my job to reduce as much as possible. But then again, maybe the negative impact of going to shoot this movie is going to be so much outweighed by the positive impact it's going to bring to the people that it is such a worthwhile investment.
Fascinating. Can I ask you to comment more about your work in that regard? And on the words, you almost answered my next question. I'm so relieved you hadn't. So what impact can the film industry have on reducing climate change footprint, not just through storytelling, but also by having a positive climate impact as an industry in filmmaking?
Yes, so we do have a footprint like anyone else, I would say, any other industry. It's not just the carbon footprint as well. I think I would like to stress that. It's often because again, it goes down to the measuring. So how do we measure? So CO2, we have somewhat learned how to measure, and so we usually use that. But then the biodiversity of our locations, the animal welfare that goes on there, it is crucial, and sometimes we come to these places and disrupt what is there, or even worse, maybe exploit the situation there to get out an emotional response. And so it is really our duty to kind of, is it walk the walk? Is that the saying, right? And try to reduce it. So what we do is that we come in from as early as possible, hopefully location shooting, scouting, and we try to reprogram the way that we consume energy, transport, materials, and everything so that we can be transparent to the outside.
Great. So on that note of walk the talk, do we have any questions from the audience? In the interest of time, we may only be able to take 1 or 2 questions, but yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm curious as to the level of understanding around Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions within the film industry, and if it's at a low level, what projects or efforts are being made to educate the film industry about ESG and Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3? Thanks.
Wow, so we have time for 1 question, because that answer is good. It's not an easy answer. So what we're measuring, it really depends on the methodology. My belief in what we're doing personally is really focusing more on the so-called direct emissions and calculating those versus trying to use conversion factors that we don't really have a common understanding of for the Scope 3. And so what we usually end up with at the end is both CO2 measurements and greenhouse gas measurements in general, because let me remind you, under all that ice is also a lot of greenhouse gas that we don't want to get out. And then we try to come out also with other measures of impact which are more related to what we're talking about, so a water footprint and so on. As in regards to the whole industry, well, that's a big question. I don't know where we're at that point. I think we're a bit simplifying. So we're trying to go towards, is your film green or not green? Is it sustainable or not? Versus trying to have a learning curve in how we do our work. And we're only measuring carbon. So if I had to have a question to the industry, I would try to broaden the way that we calculate impact both horizontally and vertically in our life cycle.
Brilliant. Thank you. 1 last question, if any. And if not, final words from our speakers. So could Tonje, perhaps you go first?
Well, as storytellers, I think that today it's important that we realize how powerful stories can be, and really maybe the most powerful tool that we have in creating social change. And I think that we're at a time in our history where it's incredibly important that we come together and create a common ground where we can figure out how to tell stories that wake people up from apathy, which I feel is maybe our biggest challenge. And also creating love. And that sounds really maybe fluffy or cheesy, but I mean it in a really deep sense, because what we know and what we love, we protect, and what we don't protect, we lose. So that's my...
Brilliant. Thank you. Tommy?
I couldn't agree more, and I think I'm glad that Teddy as a main character is not like an environmental angel. He's not perfect in any way. He has his struggles internally with, you know, is it right to travel the world making ice music? Is that the way to say, really change or save the world, the planet? And I think these dilemmas we encountered all the time. Like, we traveled here to have this talk, and I think to be able to identify and try to, you know, I wish I was Greta Thunberg, but I'm not. So I have to find my way. And I think, you know, especially in the film industry, sometimes as a documentary filmmaker, I think it's my mission to go places because people can't. And it's a good thing as well, because it's not, you hear like, oh, go see Venice before it sinks. You know, the Galapagos, see it before it dies. And you don't want that. So, you know, filmmakers can solve those kind of issues, but also they can create this kind of, like when you have the beach, or like you have a K-pop band making a music video at the Lake Baikal. People go there a lot because it has this it becomes a cultural phenomenon. So you know, yeah, I think you need to be really aware of the effect of film and storytelling as well, because people want to have a nice and exciting life. And traveling is amazing, and seeing precious places is amazing. But to, you know, you don't have to be perfect, but try to be aware about it, and also be as filmmakers to try to say, not create this kind of cultural iconic places where that doesn't need to be visited.
Thank you, Tonje. And final words, Ludovica.
So many. I'm really sorry I got so overwhelmed. I don't know. I think we have the power. We all said it already, to make also very unpopular and maybe a bit boring, you know, things trendy all of a sudden. Think about chess and the Queen Gambit. I don't know how many of you are world champions of chess, but we could agree it's not that thrilling. And then it became, because our narratives brought us there. So I think if we did that with the same level of craftsmanship as we did for writing and directing for something that is so close to our hearts, I mean, we could probably catch all of the hearts of all of our audiences.
Brilliant, thank you. On that note, thank you very much for joining this panel. We do hope you stay. Think Film impACT Production has 2 more panels coming up. So over to you, Danielle.